All right, call to order the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, June 15th, 2023. Present at the front table to my far left, Jessica Vitale, a voting member. Next to Jessica is Ed McGargy, a voting member. To my left, Ernie Angelos, our solicitor.
Good evening.
My right, Bill Rhodes, a voting member. Next to Bill is Jesse Poynton, a voting member. Far right, Kelly Kirk, zoning officer for Haverford Township, and Margie Buchanan, our chief administrator. How's that? Billy, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Please rise and repeat after me.
United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have one continued, 3 new cases, do it last, and a few administrative items. We'll leave the administrative items until last. The continued case is Z23-05 DMG Elite Properties LLC, owners of 8 Campbell Avenue, Havertown, PA, DC folio number 2230000224000. And I won't read the rest of the description into the record unless somebody specifically requested I do so.
Good evening, thank you. Again, George Lavin, representing Penn Construction. As we wound up the last hearing last time, I think the main request was to, and the most longest request for more information was to lay out and try to identify all the variances that were needed and when they came about. So what I have done is pulled the ordinance out here and I've also prepared a matrix or chart. And I just wanted to walk you through a few nuances before I jump into the matrix or chart. Essentially, this is for the R6, and there's various different categories of housing. The first one they talk about is single-family detached dwellings. Number 2 is single-family semi-detached dwellings or 2-family detached dwellings and uses by special exception. And then the third is triplexes or quadruplex designs. So, and they have different setbacks and different requirements for each of them. So what I did was basically take all that information and put it together into a matrix that lays out basically all the requirements of the different ordinances and different structures you can build in an R6 district. This exhibit, and we can identify them later, is what I'm kind of calling a compliance matrix. The top portion where there's a break in the line is essentially the as-built position off of the drawing we presented last week. So we went and we looked at that. We laid out all the requirements and then looked at the actual dimensions on the building itself, the as-built, and that is what is listed under the proposed column there. So, for instance, when Tom calculated, or the surveyors calculated the lot size, we have the ordinances, the different lot sizes for the different types of structures that can be put in the ordinance there on the left, and on the right side is our lot size as built and as existing. The street frontage, one question I spoke to Kelly about is, as we view this, the front of the house is actually the front facing Campbell Avenue. Not the portion facing Darby Road, as the address indicates and as is kind of tradition in Haverford Township. So we've got, we've got all those various distances, and they were actually taken off the survey that we did earlier. So what it's telling us is that the width of the lot where the building is over 50 feet. The coverage of the building on the property where the requirements for R6 vary between 40 and 45%. We have currently, the building is 43.9%. The front setback, which would be the setback as I'm using it from Campbell Road to the existing structure, is over 20 feet now, slightly over 20, and there's well over 12 feet. The requirements are for on a corner lot, which this is, to have 20 feet on one side and 12 feet on the other, so we meet that. As you can see, as I'm walking through this, the green means we're good, and that's where it meets one of the requirements in that area. The blue indicates that we're, the as-built structure is already out of compliance. The side yard, which is the yard, as I'm calling it now, between the neighbor's house and driveway and what is the back of the restaurant area, that measures 5.24 feet. For a single residence, it's supposed to be 7 feet. Same for the same distance for special exception. The rear yard, which is what I'm calling the yard between the existing structure and the cheese club, it measures right now 3.86 feet from the property line to the back of that structure on the existing lamplighter property. The height, as we showed earlier on, is going to be within the requirements. The impervious surface, while the maximum is 75%, the site as is 84.6%. Off-street parking for this use, instead of a restaurant, the restaurant probably required at least 30 parking spots. I think it's a spot for every 100 square feet of restaurant area that patrons can use. So, and the restaurant was over 3,000 square feet of usable space if you don't count the decks and things like that. So that's where that is. We have 11 on site. Dan has testified previously that he has 3 permits in the township lots around there. So we're going to propose leasing 4 spots from Grace Chapel, and can talk about why we're doing that way. The bottom half of this matrix here essentially shows the changes that we're making to the building. And what that is the calculation of square feet that we're adding from the existing footprint that we believe has been approved by the township, at least, when the decks were being built, the footprint of the building. The bottom part shows what we're changing. The first floor is currently 3,576 square feet. We're actually going to decrease that a little bit by taking some of the round area out of the front, so we're going to drop that by 30 feet. So we'll essentially keep the first floor the same. The big changes are the second and third floors. On the left-hand side of that column, you can see the square footage, and this is only interior square footage. This is not counting deck space. Arguably, the deck space also adds to the existing bulk use variances that were there, but I'm taking it, the most conservative way, and I'm just counting the interior square foot and not the deck space there. So we've got second floor, there's 822 square feet, interior walled off, heated and cooled. We want to go up a lot to 3,500, essentially keeping the footprint the same. And the same for the third floor. That's a little smaller, 782 square feet. So we want to go up. Overall, essentially, without just counting interior space in there, we are increasing the square footage of the building. We're almost doubling the square footage of the building. Interior square foot. If you count the decks and things, it might be 50% more. We haven't actually done that calculation because I just wanted to do it this way for now. So that is essentially what I wanted to present for the variances and things like that, and then maybe stop here, see if you all had any questions, and then move on to a couple different things if that works.
Jessica, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Ed?
No question.
Bill?
Not now.
Jesse?
Just looking at this, George, do
Sure.
you have an exact list of the subsections and sections, and then the specific amount that you're requesting? And the reason why
I can add them very quickly and easily. I just did not do that. But
because what the board's
the-
going to end up looking at,
Yeah.
they're going to have to look at specific code sections,
well,
and then determine what the amount of relief that you're needed based on the section.
Yeah.
One question that I think I heard you say was that under the impervious surface max, you have proposed 84.6%, but I think you said that that's what it is existing.
correct. So it's our position that that's something the township previously approved when they approved that set of drawings we presented at the last hearing.
But you have it in blue rather than green.
Well, and I understood, that's one of, I didn't understand if y'all agreed with my proposition that since the township signed off and approved that drawing, that meant the variance was approved at that time.
Right, so then if it be proposed, then the question should be that show what exactly you're claiming the existing is, and then obviously.
We're claiming the existing is 84.6, that's right off the survey. Yeah. So that's all on the proposed are measurements right off the survey. And that's as built.
That includes the deck?
That includes, the top includes the deck measurements, the distances to the edges of the deck. The bottom, which we are proposing, only includes interior space. So that's a difference between the two charts. So where the exterior of the building stuck out and was deck, we're not counting that as, an air-conditioned space, because you're comparing a deck to what will likely be finished air-conditioned space in the beginning. So and I wanted to give you the worst-case numbers.
And you're also seeking a use variance, right, which I don't think is
Yes.
part of
Yes.
this.
We presented that earlier. I did not list that. I can update this and list that as well, and will. And from, Ernie, from your standpoint, if you look at the top of the chart where it says single, C.1, that's subsection C, capital letter C, subsection 1 of that ordinance. So that does, and then it breaks down below that, the lot size, those are all.
But I think what the board would be looking at is, these are extra permitted uses. We're looking at what use you're presenting and what that is compared to what the code requires for that particular use.
Okay. Well, it would be the same numbers, but I understand what you're saying. I can come back and tweak that
So,
and give it to
technically,
you.
I guess you're looking at it as a tri-quad, right?
Yes.
So the single SD and the two-family technically are extra in the code. We're not looking at that. We're looking at
Well-
what the tri-quad requires and what you're proposing in connection with
Correct.
what the tri-quad requires.
But, I'm looking at it like it was originally the single. So I'm using that as when it was built, the side residence, the distance between the houses was 7 feet. From the back of the restaurant to where the fence is between the two houses. So that's, and that's why I threw all of them up there, because this, as we all know, doesn't, we're trying to get a square peg maybe into a round hole, but, yeah. Okay.
George, can I just ask you a
Sure.
question? You mentioned 7 parking spots made available through Grace Chapel.
There would be actually 3, Dan has 3 permits, there's 11 on site as part of the drawing.
These are, so you want to, these are preferential rights to pay
No,
in a public
these
lot?
are, I think they're assigned, we can have Dan testify, but they're township-assigned parking permits that you can use 24 hours a day in any public lots.
You
There
can,
might
but
even be a assigned spot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that they're not dedicated to you. If you park there, you don't have to pay in the meter or the kiosk, but they're not reserved spots.
I know some in the township are reserved. I don't know the answer to these 3 spots. I know the ones in the existing
you can bring
township, the old township building lot, some of them are reserved.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we need to know exactly what these 3
Okay.
spots are and how they're reserved, or
Okay.
they would be set aside only for this project. And then what you're renting 4 spots from Grace Chapel,
Yes.
and you have a lease for that?
We have a proposed lease. I know there was some hesitation last time about the lease. We have, at the last meeting, Dan presented some photos of the usage there. We have an option of, I guess, either doing it through Grace Chapel directly or through some of the other people that are leasing that aren't using the spots, for instance, ETF Architects. So, we're going to use the same essential lease to get 4 spots. And I am not sure how we will actually execute that, but we're very confident we can get that done to get 4 more.
So I'm personally a little skeptical about Grace Church parking leases. They seem to have leased spots out to everyone in Oakmont, multiple projects. And the fine print on some of those leases, which we have looked at.
Okay.
Have not provided for 24/7 use of those spots. In fact, even during the middle of a workday, they have the right to use their entire parking lot for funeral services and other types of services.
Understood, yes.
And meaning that this is not a universally available parking spot. And so, as far as the parking goes, I still think there's some question marks about how much
Understood.
parking you have. And I realize you've sort of suggested you have 18. I would suggest that at the first hearing, we asked to see a plan that showed all the parking spots striped out. And as far as I'm concerned, until we see binding leases, and I also would want to see an accounting of all of the Grace Chapel leases and their available parking spots and how you're getting 4 new ones.
Well, I'll tell you specifically one instance. The lease with ETF Architects requires 30 spots. They have 6 employees. There's 24 spots every day open. We would like to, there's 4 spots there, and that's essentially what I'm proposing.
Right, and all I'm saying is they're not open every day. They're open every day that Grace Chapel doesn't use them.
I misspoke. You are correct, but Grace Chapel does not use them frequently during the week. And we understand the limitations and are willing to live with those limitations.
And the days they are using it, it becomes a problem for not just your project, but every other project that has said, give us relief from parking because we're renting units from Grace Chapel.
I can't speak for the other people, but we don't believe it will cause any problems for our project. We don't have, it's not a walk-in retail location. It's more an appointment and a showroom for reconstruction. And the residents, there will be plenty of spots for the residents. So we don't see that as a problem. We disagree. And we don't believe it's our problem. We believe it's a township problem. There's just not sufficient parking in Oakmont to support the businesses and the people that want to move in there. I mean, it's I understand the issues, but I don't think it's right to penalize people that are trying to help and improve the township for an existing problem that is not being worked on. It's every time you walk in here, you can't park in Oakmont. It's, $2,000 for the township every time you walk in the door because there's no parking in Oakmont. Nobody can pass and move in and start a business without a variance. Same on Brookline, It's not a good way to do things. This was the #1 residential destination in the entire Northeast U.S. according to Zillow, and you can't park. It's a little ridiculous, but I'll get off my soapbox. I apologize. We all have the same problem. I would like to see it solved, and we're trying our best to make the township better and try to solve the parking problem as well. So, any other questions?
Jesse?
Let me just look at my exhibits here. I do have handouts of those exhibits that I can give you all. Let me do that before I get too far along.
The last marked exhibit I have, George, is A12.
A12.
Your next exhibit would be,
I'll make 13 the ordinance itself and 14 the matrix.
that one's 14.
You all need a copy of the ordinance itself, which would be 13.
If you're,
doing this. And ready to come talk about some of the things that he has.
Want to move both these in, right?
Yes, please. All right.
Thanks. 13 and 14, A13 and A14 are admitted.
Walk through some of this stuff.
That you were sworn up prior, yeah, so you're still under oath.
Yes.
And tell you what, why don't you just give the board a little bit of an idea of what you've done since the last hearing?
Yeah, so taking under consideration what was discussed last time, we've looked into and have drawn up moving away from the neighbor to the right on Campbell Avenue directly behind, proposing that we move the second and third floors 5 feet forward towards Darby Road. That would then allow on the second and third floors only 10 feet, I think it's a little over 10 feet, but 10 feet, a couple inches between there and our property line. And I don't have Kim's measure, but I assume it's at least 10 to 12 feet with the driveway to her house. So allowing somewhere between 20 and 22 feet, my estimation, between the two buildings. We believe that would allow more sunlight, get away from there a little bit. I also did meet with Kim to try and, work through some issues. It's my understanding that she's just not in favor of the build, regardless of how we do it at current proposal, either the current proposal or what I just mentioned to you. Another concern was the air conditioners. That's why I met with one of the reasons I met with her. I'm willing to put them wherever is least inconvenient for her, quite honestly. And whatever barrier to direct the noise, although I believe it's minimal in today's standards, but we would direct that up and away from her property. So that's.
Did you modify your plan then? Are you saying that you now propose to set the second and third floors back 5 additional feet?
So we do have that drawn for you and have copies of it.
Do you have the updated calculations for the square footage to go along with that? The additional bulk?
I think what he said is he's just going to slide it.
For this purpose, we just kept them the same. We assumed they'd be approximately the same, because we're just literally moving the same footprint 5 feet forward.
But you previously testified that you were extruding the building up in its exact footprint and reusing
Correct.
the foundation. So how does that work?
Well, yeah, now we would have to change that. I mean, we're doing this. I'm okay either way. I'm trying to do this to appease other people. I'm willing to do that. It'll cost us more money. That's fine. I'm in favor of getting away from Kim's house to allow more light there. It's probably the right thing to do. So I'm totally willing to do that. But if that's going to cause other issues, as far as the board's concerned, we can leave it as is too.
What just seemed to be a big part of your case was that you were basically just reusing the foundation and building it straight up. So that's definitely a big difference.
I just felt the read that I got was that that was an issue for the board, and the neighbor behind. So we're willing to adjust that. Obviously, if we move it forward, there's foundation things that are gonna have to happen. Moving it forward, but,
But why don't we take a look at the plan?
yep.
Okay. Have time. This will be, I think we're up to 15.
Yes, 15.
Okay.
The first floor that you'll see, if you're on Darby Road, looking at it, on the right-hand side, that would require a new foundation on that part to support.
Dan, just one question,
Sure.
like, if you were to shift this forward towards Darby, let's call it.
Yep.
Then the second and third floors would overhang the parking spots a little bit, is that, or they'd still,
They would not.
it would not? So the first floor, proposed first floor plan, which shows cars right up to the side of the building, the second floor would not overhang the first floor on the Darby side of the building?
Not as proposed, no.
Okay.
So are you really cutting down the size of the building in the back, eliminating square footage?
We'd be eliminating some square footage on the second and third floors. The first floor, we would, the front right-hand side of that, where the current, like, curved structure is, that would be bumped forward so that we could support the second and third floors. So the first floor would gain minimal square footage, but it would gain a little bit, and it's really just to support the second and third floors. That also proposes, the entrance for the residents of the second and third floor would now be through the Darby Road side of the building, and not the Campbell Ave side of the building.
And then, as far as looking at the structural aspects, what would you do with that, as long as this is looked at more favorably? Just get the structural engineer back, or how would you handle that?
I mean, if this was favorable, the next step would be structural engineer.
It looks like you lose one parking spot because of the entrance.
There should be, the entrance, which entrance?
The proposed entrance now has a parking spot in front of it, so that parking spot wouldn't work. Somebody would have to climb over the hood of the car to get into the door.
Well, it's no different than Wawa, where you just walk between the cars.
They have a sidewalk there, though. There's no sidewalk. Anyway,
Dan, would there be room for people, if there was a car in that spot in front of the entranceway for the upstairs, would there be room for people to get in?
I believe so, yes.
Any other questions about these plans? Jessica?
I don't have any questions.
Ed?
No question.
Bill?
No, not at this time.
Anything else, Jessica?
So just to clarify for the record, the first floor would remain at the location it is at 5'7" 7/8" from the property line. And then you would step back at the second floor?
Correct.
Then the front of the building facing Darby would also move the same 5 feet?
Only the right-hand side of it to support the second floor. Everything, if you look at the original, you see where that step is in the building. Everything to the left stays as is.
Okay. No other question?
Go ahead, George.
Okay. There's that, anything else on the drawings or the changes or anything else you've done?
No, the only thing that came up earlier was the parking. So the parking in the, forgive me, I don't know the names of the lots, but in the old township building lot, those are specific parking spots.
They're not public.
There's four permit parking spots, and they do not have meters in them. Like they are just for permit parking. We then have one in the lot behind Oakmont, I guess, where like Crust Pizza is, that lot. Those ones are open for anybody.
Right, so those are definitely, even if you had paid for an entitlement, if there's a car in your spot in that lot, it's public parking, right?
Yes, I've lived there for a year and a half. I've never had an issue parking.
And so why bother with getting permit parking in the Quadrani or whatever building if you have no problem getting public parking spots in Oakmont?
Because you're requiring more spots for this building.
Okay, got it. And then, so on your Grace Chapel negotiations, we don't give credit without a lease.
Understood. I just know there was concerns with Grace Chapel and wanted
Yeah.
to tell you that again. That's the way we're going.
There's a point at which the availability of parking at Grace Chapel is going to be disregarded entirely, because we can't, as much as we agree that the commissioners maybe want to revisit at some point parking requirements in a very dense district like the Oakmont
Understood.
area, not everyone is just going to use Grace Chapel to solve everyone's parking problem. And no matter how much they want to pay the church to buy the rights, those rights are not permanent, universally available parking spots.
Understood.
And regardless of that, we did talk about the last meeting when you were here, is the fact. The one thing we did talk about last time is the ordinance does not allow to provide parking spots at Grace Chapel because Grace Chapel hasn't been proven to have a required number of parking spots. So they don't even have them available according to the zoning ordinance.
I understand, but I also, what is a business supposed to do? I mean, I own a business now on Eagle Road.
And maybe you should
I just,
go through one more time. How many employees are you gonna have? How many customers typically come in your showroom
Yep.
at a time? Do they come by appointment generally?
sure.
Just,
Okay, yep. Who knows what the future holds, right? Currently, I have 3 people that work in my office, including me, on 24 East Eagle Road. We have, let's call it maybe 2 to 3 customers that come in there a week. There's probably, in the 2 years that we've been there, there's probably been 2 people that have walked off the street and came in and looked for something. Everything is by appointment. There's not many people that are gonna walk off the street looking to spend, I don't know, something between $30 and $1 million, just walking off. It's all by appointment. and we have one designer. She can only handle one person at a time, so it's all an appointment. All of our field employees are virtually never there, right? They may stop by to get some paperwork real fast, in and out, back to the job site. So it's currently, the way we're currently set up, there's no more than 4 people at our office basically ever.
And then the second floor is going to be two apartments.
Second floor is 3 apartments, third floor is 1 apartment, which would be mine.
Any other questions? Or George, proceed? No? Okay, go ahead, George.
If you're through, Dan, we'll see if you have any questions for Tom on the redesign that he can clear up. And then I think that's it. I can summarize or answer some more questions, but I understand we need to supplement the matrix there with some more details.
Do you have the, you probably don't want to submit a proposed with Great.
No, I will get that done. I just knew there was a question before I did a previous lease with Great Chapel, so I know the gentleman who runs that, so I will speak with him and see if we can do something to ease it into the ETF Architects realm, because again, they've got 6 employees and 30 spots. So we know that's I guess a compliance type lease as opposed to a practical type lease. And I hate to put it that way.
Operation again, Dan, typically.
Typically in the office,
Yeah.
typically 9 to 3.
Does anyone need more time to go through these plans before Tom comes up and asks more questions?
No, I went back and looked at and compared, and now I understand better.
Jess,
I don't have any questions.
have you had sufficient time to look at this new plan? Okay. Ed, you're good. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Let's,
Just call Tom Wiedemann up real quick and have him address the plans, the changes, and then see if you all have any more questions for him.
you were sworn at the initial, meeting, still under oath. Please proceed.
Okay. As Dan had said, we pulled that second and third floor towards Darby to get it away from the property line, just to give more light and separation to the neighbor. We did, however, keep the first floor there, and it's just gonna have a slight shed roof right above, you really won't see much of it right above the fence line. I know there was a question about that parking space in front of the walkway. We do have enough room, it just hasn't been configured yet. I was trying to rework it at the last minute today, but I know I'd already given George the floor plan, so it was just gonna mix it up. But there is an extra 4 feet in there that it's not gonna be a problem.
Question for Tom, Jessica? Ed?
No questions.
Bill? Yeah, no questions, sir.
I have to ask something. So now that the facade along Darby would be much more of a straight line instead of broken up, would you look to, break it up architecturally?
Yeah, what we're looking to do so far is the entry will be inset, and also the balconies where we had them sticking out before, they'll be inset. Also, we did the comparison between the existing site and the proposed site. I just kind of wanted to show a parking breakdown, really, because going from the restaurant, we're coming up with right around 30 spots. And that's not including anything with the kitchen. There's about 750 square feet of kitchen in there. That's just the patrons area. We came up with 29 spots. And currently, there's only 11 spots there, so we're hoping to make a big difference with the parking there.
Actually, it says 9 total provided on site. You said 11. Is it, what's current? Is it 9? On the plan, it says 9 total provided.
Okay, then I guess, 9, because they're not using the left-hand section for parking.
Thanks.
But just to clarify, that, I think it's 9 existing spots with stripes, but the proposed plan is to use the area in front of the storage area or closer to the Cheese Club. That would become some additional spots there. It's my understanding. I don't know if it's on that drawing, but it's
Yeah,
on one of the
Two
sketches.
spots there, and then there's also one in the
Okay.
garage.
And we do have, you know, a provision where we could put it on the additional parking on the Campbell Road size, but we decided not to do that, you know, because of the impervious parking problems and the green space and things like that. So, you know, we don't want to jam too many spots on there and think, you know, off-site or off this site parking will be sufficient for what we have. I did have one clarifying question, Tom. As far as, I think there were questions before, are you actually pulling the front square footage? Are you cantilevering that out, or are you changing the front facade where it used to be?
No, it'll be flat from the first floor up to the third,
Okay,
and then, you know, we'll inset at the balconies and the entryway.
so you aren't really changing the footprint on the front part of the building as it goes to the third floor? That's going to be the same footprint as originally proposed?
Well, the right-hand side slides forward about 6 feet.
Okay. And that's the Campbell Road side or the Cheese Club
Yeah.
side?
Closer to Campbell.
Okay.
All good, Jess?
No other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Tom.
All right, thanks.
First, I want to thank you again. We do have the list of things to do, which is to put a little more meat on the bones of this matrix and get more specific about what we're asking you for as far as expanding the use and the square footage, and come back with that. And I'm assuming maybe some sort of rough frontage plan or some sort of
Elevation.
elevations.
Be nice.
Okay. Okay.
You should, I think Ernie understands exactly what the board is looking for. Maybe you give him a call,
I will do that.
make sure you guys
I
are,
will do that. Yep, absolutely.
he's willing to talk to you about
Sure.
it. With, we took public testimony at the last. Because we had additional testimony and some additional exhibits, we don't need to hear repetitive testimony, but I'll ask if there's anyone present that received certified mail that wishes to give additional testimony. Please come forward.
Yeah, I just had a couple other things.
Would just state your name again for the record.
Okay, Kim, I'm at 10 Campbell, right on.
And you were sworn at the initial hearing?
Yes.
So you're still on
Yes.
the, go ahead, Kim.
So I guess one of the things with Grace Chapel that, like, I know that I think it's every Wednesday, they have a farmer's market that goes all day, and that additionally already brings tons of additional traffic onto our street and our area and makes it really even more congested. So that was just a side thing I wanted to say. But I guess I just wanted to show, like, so from my backyard, this is currently my view. There's 4 very beautiful large trees that are kind of, these 2 are probably on my, it's hard to see, but this is my garage. There's 2 trees that are probably on my property, and then the other 2 here are right on the property line. I had met with Dan earlier, and he was saying that his proposal, he would just have to cut them back. Looking at all this, though, I think it would be really hard for these trees to survive being cut back that far. And it would look horrible. So my neighbors, so if you go up Campbell, it's a little bit of an incline and the backyards are straight up. So my neighbor's concern that is when they look down their backyard, instead of seeing this, they're now going to see something like this. You know, these trees, they lose their leaves in the, you know, in the winter.
Do the trees overhang across onto the property, lamplighter property, the branches?
Absolutely. They overhang at least 20 feet on both sides. They're completely over my
Can't be
garage.
20 feet, because the building's only, how far is the building away from your property again, the lamplighter?
How far is this building going to be?
Yes.
I think about 5 feet.
So how could the trees overhang 20 feet into the lamplighter property?
It's only one story back here.
Okay.
Currently, this is just one story, one floor, and it's not even one store. Like, this is my garage here. They're flat, one-story buildings back there. But if he's gonna build up 3 stories, he's gonna have to cut those back. And you can see how they completely overhang all the way across my, you know, this is my, you know, my property. They overhang the same on the other side.
So if someone owned a restaurant there, a bar, and they didn't like the way the trees hung over, would they be allowed to cut them anyway?
I think so. I don't know the law, but I think they probably would. I don't think they would survive being cut back enough to put a 3-story structure back there.
So if there was a requirement and that they plant a buffer, which if this was approved, there would be, like evergreen buffer or some kind of buffer, would that resolve the tree issue for you, or?
If there was some kind of green buffer there,
Yeah.
it's going to be that high. I mean, these are 65-foot trees.
So is there anything that would be acceptable going to that
To be
building?
honest with you, when I'm in my backyard and I'm on my patio and I'm entertaining, and this is what my yard looks like, and this is how it's looked for the 27 years I've been there, to go from that to this, no, it's not acceptable to me. It's just not.
What would be acceptable at that location for you?
I mean, back here, these are just one-story buildings, and like I said, they're way behind my garage because they're just flat roofs. The home,
But what I'm asking you is what type of business at that location would be?
you know, it's not so much the business, it's the size. This is a small residential lot, and to put a 10,000 square foot commercial building on a small residential plot, on a residential street, like my neighbors all have yards, you know, that look like this. And to put a huge commercial building at the end of this street, it's just too big, it's too much. And that's what I have the biggest problem with. The home right now, where it's 2 stories, is pretty much the same size, you know, it lines up with my home. So they are too close together, it should be moved out, that would be great. But it's, like I said, when I'm in my backyard, I don't see 8 Campbell. I really don't. I can entertain back there. It's private, it's pretty. It's a whole different feel. This is going to be 3 floors. The open balcony is going to be 2 floors above my garage. This is currently where 8 Campbell ends.
The building's 2 floors now, isn't it?
What's that?
The building is 2 floors now, isn't it?
It is, but it ends, this red here is right now where the home ends. But if this proposal goes through, it's going to go all the way behind my garage.
Any other questions? Bill, Jesse, Ed, Jessica? George, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else that received certified mail? Anyone that received regular mail? Any other resident of Haverford Township? Steve, right? Yes. All right, you were sworn at the last hearing,
Yes, I
Steve,
was.
you're still under oath. What additionally would you like to tell?
I just wanted to address William's concerns because he wasn't at the last meeting. I call in Penn Construction. I sell kitchen cabinets to them. Visually, I told these guys my territory is from the Hamptons to Rochester, New York to Roanoke, Virginia. I'm in hundreds of kitchen showrooms. The foot traffic and the parking you're worrying about is a non-factor. truthfully. A lot of the showrooms, and most of the showrooms, by appointment only, and if you show up unannounced, it's closed. And it's gotten that way since COVID, and it's continued to be that way. In fact, some people are even getting away from showrooms. So I just want to back that up because I had told you guys last time.
Okay. Any questions? Jesse, Bill, Ed, Jessica,
No.
George?
No questions.
Okay. Any other residents of Haverford Township? With that, we'll continue this case to our next regularly scheduled hearing, which is on, what's the date? July 20th? I may not be here. I'm planning to surprise my wife with a trip.
If she watches TV, it's
Continue
not
to
a
July
surprise.
20th. Believe me, she doesn't watch this. It was a rough tax season, so she earned it. So this case is continued. We're going to take a few minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
But one other thing, I think just for exhibit stuff, did you get a chance to get the drive over to Marge or Kelly on the exhibit you had?
I gave
Okay, awesome.
all the exhibits digitally to Kelly. Yes, and we'll review them. This one?
15? No, here.
Thank you.
You have 13 and 14, Kel? Junior.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have more copies here.
All right. We'll take two, and then we'll do George and Annie and Arcot? Connicott. Apologize. I'm going to go with George and Annie, if that's okay. All right. Few-minute recess. Our next case is Z23-10, George and Annie Connicott,
yes.
owners of 2346 Poplar Road, Havertown, PA, DC folio number 2203-00833-00. To seek a variance from the provisions of section 182-727 to construct an open aluminum black 4-foot fence that will encroach into the required 30-foot primary front yard setback on a corner property between 22.05 feet and 27.27 feet. Property is on R4, located in the 3rd Ward. Good evening.
Good
I
evening.
need to swear you in. Ladies first, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and address for the record, please?
Annie Kanarka, 2345 Poplar Road, Havertown, PA, 19083.
It seems repetitive, but please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and address for the record, please?
George Connercott, 2345 Poplar Road, Havertown, PA, 19083.
Okay. So you submitted an application to the township. If you want, if you're going to refer to anything that was attached to your application throughout this hearing, it needs to be marked as an exhibit. So is there anything that was attached to your application that you are going to refer to during your hearing here that you would like marked?
I think the property plan, it could be exhibit A.
This?
No, the one that's on the screen now, the survey with the,
Yeah.
and then the exhibit B would be the last two pages of the application, which are the letters signed by our neighbors. And then we also have photos, should we give those to you now, or?
Want to mark or take care of it?
Include the deed as well. Deed A1. And the neighbor letter. And then
Are there any other exhibits that you want to mark?
That's it.
These photos?
Yeah, these photos, and then that's it.
Collectively, as four?
Yeah.
Okay, so the packet of photos, there's, how many?
I think we
So A4 will be the 6 photos. Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, please tell us a little bit about what you would like to do and
Okay. So just by way of a brief introduction, we moved into this home in January with our two daughters, who you've seen running around in the back. And I think we've been impressed with the culture of our neighborhood. Reason why we moved to Havertown, we met all our neighbors before we moved in. We feel like we can walk up to them and ask them for anything we need, and it's been great. And we've been we're parishioners at St. Denis that we walk to. We've taken part in events at Merwood Park, so it's been great living in Havertown. And really the primary reason that we want to build a fence around our property is for safety, and while maintaining the culture of our neighborhood. Part of our property is adjacent to Eagle Road. I think from the first picture you can see the road looks like that very often during the day. And really right now there's not a safe outdoor space for our children, for our neighbors' kids, or other friends for our children to come and play on our property. In addition, if they are playing on the property and toys and other things like that, or balls fall onto the road, that is also a hazard. Annie and I are both in healthcare, so we see this on a daily basis, the trauma to children, the trauma to others. We see that often on a daily basis. And I think the reason that we're coming here with need for a variance is that I think per the way that the property is zoned, Eagle Road is considered our front yard, but for all other intents and purposes, the way the house is built, our front door faces Poplar Road. Our mailing address, the deed address is all listed as our front, being essentially thinking of our front as Poplar Road. So the fence with the variance would allow for this protected space on the side of Eagle Road, and including the small area that's included on the back of our yard, back of our property as well. And I think as the letter that we submitted, our neighbors, especially the immediate ones, are all in favor of us putting up this fence, have no issues with it, and have voiced support for the fence to keep our children, and when their children visit, safe. And we just like to emphasize that Eagle Road is a very busy road. Our crossing guard has been clipped twice in the past year. So just to give you a sense of how busy the road is, and how potentially a safety hazard it is for our kids when they're playing outside.
Did you say the crossing guard was
Yeah.
clipped by a car?
Yep.
What would the height of the fence be?
4 feet.
And is there an illustration or something of the fence that you proposed in here, George?
So there's a picture that shows the Cardinal Foley School diagonally across from us. That's the type of fence we're trying to replicate, because again, there's already a fence that exists in the neighborhood with a similar look, and so it would just kind of match and fit in. So again, we're trying to promote safety without detracting from the look of the neighborhood or the neighborliness of the neighborhood.
And you're not proposing to go up right up to your property line with this, right?
No, you'll see that our property line is marked on with a dark black line.
Exhibit A2.
Yes, in Exhibit A2, and the fence will have at least 5 feet from that.
And with the setback of where you propose to put the fence, would that interfere with the turning sight lines at all from Eagle, Poplar?
No, we don't believe so, because it'll be much shorter than any of the sight lines. We're on an incline, and especially with it being an open fence, there should be no reason for it to interfere with the site.
Questions? Jesse?
So you testified that you moved in January, is that January of this year?
Yes, January of
Okay,
2023.
just wanted to clarify that for the record. Is it possible to, is this location as far back as you can go? I mean, we have to ask, is there less relief that you could seek from us by setting it back further?
I think to maintain a functional space for us with the fencing, I think this is what we thought was a reasonable setback.
And are there any other fences that are in front of residential properties along that stretch of Eagle Road?
There is, but we didn't take a picture. There's,
Yes. So Eagle, at the corner of Eagle and Earlington, there's actually a closed white fence. And then further down, so south of St. Denis Parish, there are multiple houses that have open aluminum fences along Eagle Road.
I don't have any other questions.
Bill?
I don't have any questions.
Ed?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Exhibit A2, and just for clarification, I see red lines that are marked with distances on them. Does that red line represent where the fence will be placed, or just a distance?
So that's where the fence would be placed and the distance of fence that would be. So the distance represents the distance of fence, or the length of the fence.
So you will not be putting the actual fence between the neighbor on 405 East Eagle Road, which is down slope of you. You would not be putting in the fence on the property line. You would be putting it.
Right. So there's actually a flower bed which is pictured in the last exhibit. So the fence would actually be on closer to our side of the flower bed, and the property line actually splits the flower bed. So it would be well within on our side of the property line.
And the fence will actually set back from the edge of your existing house by a distance.
By 5 feet.
At the house, but then it sort of tapers on an angle.
Correct.
The plot plan here does not show the sidewalk. The sidewalk is, I don't know where the curb line is for Eagle Road, or where the right-of-way is. The curb line is not at the right-of-way, when the sidewalk's not at the right-of-way.
The curb is further away from our house than the right-of-way.
What would be your estimated distance from the curb line to your actual fence placement?
I would have to estimate probably 10 to 15 feet, somewhere in that range.
What do you estimate the width of the sidewalk is?
8 feet.
And will your fence be right up against the edge of the sidewalk, or will it be back?
No, so it'll be about 5 feet. At the closest, it'll be 5 feet from the right-of-way, within the right-of-way. So it'll be set back well from the sidewalk.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Without not having those things illustrated on the plan, I'm trying to picture it by your photograph then, and I see a sidewalk, and I'm trying to estimate how far back from the sidewalk.
There's a bush there. I think that's probably the best estimate of where the fence, how close the fence will come to the sidewalk.
The bush closer to the corner of Poplar and Eagle, or the bush in the rear?
Referencing that picture?
Yes, this picture, yeah.
Part of Exhibit A.
If you're looking at this photograph, that shows a bush right on Eagle Road. Okay? But according to what I'm looking at, that's the second one. There's another bush that's up closer to Poplar, and that will not have a fence up there.
No, it won't even come that far because that bush is closer to Poplar Road than where the fence ends.
Okay, so your fence will be further back than the bush in this picture that we pointed out. You're going to have that behind that fence.
Right.
So the bush will not be impacted.
Correct.
Good. Just to be clear on the Hillman Patnell next door to you at
405 East.
405 Eagle. Where is their driveway located?
It's on Eagle Road.
Is it on the opposite side of the property or closer to your property?
It is on the side further away from our property. And we actually have our Miss Janice here too.
Good. Okay, that's clear, but on your dwelling too, just to be clear too, where is your driveway located for your property?
On Poplar Road, you see where,
There's a garage.
I can, if you want to look at the screen, I can show you. This is our driveway here. On Poplar
Driveway
Road.
is,
The red SUV that you're.
Yes, yeah.
right, so it's on, further away from Eagle Road on the
on the
right-hand side of your property.
Correct.
Your driveway. That's all I have. Thank you.
Jessica?
I was just wondering why your fence does not follow the angle of Eagle Road.
That allows us some more functional space for us to use, and it's also on an incline, so that's why it just helps us kind of create some more functional space for us.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have any questions.
Okay, and George, this photo, it looks to be the back of your house.
That's right.
Is that the back of your house?
Correct.
There's a structure, there's 3 windows on it. So is that
That's a shed that,
basically your backyard?
yes.
So there's no other area on your property where
No.
the kids can play?
No, it's, the front yard that's adjacent to Poplar Road, or the side yard, or what we consider our side yard.
Any other questions? Jess?
I did think of one more when Ed brought up the point. So I guess that, I know it's not good practice to have the fence away from your property line because it kind of creates a no man's land, but as a condition, if we were to grant this, would you accept the condition that you must maintain that area between the property line and the fence?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So is it kind of a shared maintenance of that flower bed?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
No other questions?
Sorry, I have one more question.
Go ahead, Jess.
You don't have any intention to put any sort of privacy mesh between the pickets of the fence,
No.
so it'll remain open? Thank you.
Anything is safety.
Is that it? Is there anything else you guys would like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so your exhibits are admitted into the record. And with that, I'll ask if there's anyone present that received certified mail that wishes to testify. Please come forward. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and address for the record, please.
Janice, Janice, last name D, spelled D-E-A.
What's your address, Janice?
405 East Eagle Road, Havertown.
And what would you like to tell us, Janice?
They're wonderful neighbors, and the Eagle Road is, I've been in my house since 1991, and it faces Eagle Road. And before that, I lived in the Twins on the same street on the other side, and traffic has substantially increased since in the amount of time that I've lived here. And there is concern for the kids. And I'm very close with them. I love their children. And I would very much like to see them have a fence. I don't think it doesn't, our properties join, and I have no problem at all with them putting a fence up. And I love gardening, so I don't have a problem helping maintain any shared space.
Okay, any questions for John? No? Ed? Jesse? Bill?
I just want to make sure, so when you say you're adjoining, you're the immediate neighbor down Eagle Road?
May I approach and look
Is
at the
this,
pictures?
is this your house to the right?
Yes,
So the photo that I referenced that depicts a structure with 3 windows, the house to the right,
it's mine.
that is indicated, that's our home.
Okay, and that's the flower bed that,
I put that flower bed in.
okay, got it.
It's nice.
Thank you.
Anything else? Guys, no? Anything else you'd like to add, Janice?
Just as additional information, there are 2 houses down Arlington Road that are both corner houses that are across the street from each other that have the exact fence that they're interested in, my neighbors are interested in putting in. So I don't think it would be an impaired sight view for traffic. And I also would like to say that there have been a number of accidents at that intersection of Poplar and Eagle. And I would hate to see one of the kids get hurt.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Any other residents of Haverford Township? With that, we'll close the record on this case, and a decision will be rendered either this evening. If we're unable to render a decision this evening, a decision will be rendered at our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 20. That's it. Thank you. Have a good night. Next case is Z23-11, Edmund and Michelle Grant, owners of 104 Allgate Drive, Haverford, PA, DC Folio number 2204-00000164, and equitable owners of a portion of 108 Allgate Drive, Haverford, PA, DC Folio number 2204-00000165, to seek a variance from the provisions of section 182-802B to permit 1,523 square feet from 108 Allgates Drive to be transferred and merged into 104 Allgates Drive, which transfer will decrease the lot area of 108 Allgates Drive and thereby will increase the existing non-conforming impervious coverage of 108 Allgates Drive from 43.29% to 45.43%. Now, what's this property zone? Go.
SRD, special residential district?
With an R1 underlying,
What?
with R1 low density underlying.
Okay. So zone SRD in an R1, Ward 5. Okay. And your name?
William Dion with the law firm of Silverang, Rosenzweig, and Holtzman.
I didn't even get, what's your last name, Bill?
Dion.
Do you go by Bill?
Bill's fine. It's D as in David, I-O-N.
Okay. And do you have a card with you, Brian?
I do it.
Give Arlene one. You can give Arlene one. Okay. The
Do
floor is
you want to
yours.
mark exhibits, or do you want me to just dive right in? Okay, sure. So.
I'm assuming you're probably gonna use them as you're going through it, so.
Yeah, so interesting set of facts, but I think a very simple zoning matter. So just briefly, I represent Ed and Michelle Grant, who are the owners of 104 Allgate Drive. They are the equitable owner of a portion of 108 Allgate Drive that is owned by Alan and Jean Latosky, and Mr. Latosky is here this evening, should anyone have any questions. As the chairman touched upon, we are here this evening seeking a special exception from section 182-802B for the enlargement of an existing nonconformity. The history of this is a little unique in that the development of Allgate's developed back in the early 1980s, was developed under the Special Residential District, section 182-721, which allows for cluster development. And what is important for what we're doing here this evening is the cluster development obviously takes a larger tract and allows the homes to be built on smaller lots, and the overall tract just has to demonstrate compliance with the underlying impervious coverage requirements of the R1 district, which is 30%. But that's not taken into account on individual lots, and that becomes important when we fast forward to today. The Grants, my clients, bought their property at 104 Allgates back in 2007. After purchasing it, they made certain improvements to it over the years, in particular a pool, a children's swing set, and that went merrily on its way for many years. Mr. Latosky performed a survey on his property, not because of concern with what's happening between the two, 104 and 108, but for other purposes. And lo and behold, that's when we discovered that there were encroachments from 104 onto 108 that were improvements built over the years, and some of the setback issues. Now, all the improvements that were built were, permits were received, so it wasn't as though things were done improperly. But then we were engaged and had some staff meetings with the township to try to find the best way to solve this problem. After kicking around a couple ideas, the most convenient or way to probably tie everything off in a bow was to do a lot line change, but that would need some zoning relief. So we applied for the zoning application. And what's interesting is, again, coming back to the cluster development, The Grants property is currently under the 30%, but as we're doing this, we are conveying a portion of Mr. Latowski's property on 108 Allgates to the Grants. So their impervious coverage calculation is currently 22.39%, but when they incorporate the additional 1,523 square feet into their property, since their denominator is now bigger, their impervious coverage calculation goes down to 21.19%. But then when you look at Mr. Latowski's property, his current impervious coverage is 43.29%. And when we take that 1,523 square feet away from him to now put it onto 104, his impervious coverage goes up to 45.43%. Therefore, he's always exceeded the 30% maximum, going back to the cluster development concept, but now he will exceed it more, and therefore we lead to a special exception for the increase of a nonconformity. So that section 182.802B lists some specific criteria, all of which we comply with. I think some of it's not applicable, but we're not changing the use. It's a residential house. It's a residential house. We're not exceeding a 50% cap, and we're not changing the height, the buffer, the buffer, the off-street parking, or the yards. So that's how we end up here today, where there will be no physical changes. This is us trying to attempt to solve a problem administratively and ultimately record new deeds and new lot line plans so that the two neighbors who have amicably dealt with this over the years can now have a legal solution and record corrected deeds. I have two witnesses with me tonight. I have Mr. Grant here that he can testify, and I also have a civil engineer that will testify to the plan that he prepared. If it's so inclined with the board, I can probably give a very brief offer of proof, or we can swear them in and do it however you like.
We can swear them. You don't have to do it often.
Okay, sure.
Do you want?
I'll call Mr. Grant. So Ed, do you want to step up?
Yeah, sure.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Your full name and address for the record, please.
Edmund Grant, EDMUND, 104 Allgates Drive, Haverford, Pennsylvania, 19041.
And when did you purchase the property?
August of 2007.
And then you made certain improvements to the property over the years. Only focus on the improvements that are impacted by this lot line.
Right.
So could you tell the board what they were and what the impact is? I discovered the correct property.
Sure. So the play area is kind of an easy thing. It's easy to move. My kids are older. It really came into when in 2018 when we decided to build a pool kind of into a smaller area. And if you if you looked at the area, Alan has a very nice black steel fence, and we've had gardens that kind of went right up to it. And I think we were both a little shocked when he did the boundary survey that he actually owned some of that land into the gardens. And we had been maintaining it for the last 16 years. So when we, talked through about physical boundary lines for the pool and got the permit done, I basically gave them, bad information because it didn't require a boundary survey. So when Alan discovered that I didn't have the proper offset for the pool, we discussed me purchasing that kind of little slice of land that would kind of solve it and then keep both deeds kind of intact and still live within the letter of the law.
And you've heard me mention that you have an agreement of sale with Mr. Latowski to purchase this land. That agreement of sale is still in place.
It is.
Ultimately, you're granted this relief and you obtain a lot line change. You would purchase that property from Latowski.
I would.
I have no questions. Jessica?
I don't have any questions
Ed?
for it.
No, I appreciate the neighbors being able to work together on something like this to resolve the hardship of not having to remove a newly constructed pool and things. So, thank you.
Bill?
So the existing fence that obviously you were taking visual cues from,
Yeah.
that will stay in place, or does that have to get moved?
No, the fence it would stay there. I basically would just actually eventually own more of the garden area that approaches that fence than I thought I had in the past, I guess would be the right way to say it.
That's it. Thank you.
I would only ask, you heard all of the statements of fact that your attorney made to the board. Do you adopt those statements as your own?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yeah. Does the fence become is the fence line the new property line? Nominally?
Yes. Nominally, yes.
That was my only question. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Ed. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, all truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and the capacity in which you appear this evening?
I'm Michael Rokosny. I'm a registered Michael Rokosny.
How do you spell that?
It's Rokosny. And I am a professional engineer from Site Engineering Concepts.
I have a copy of Mr. Rokosny's CV that I can hand up as a good.
Okay. I don't think we got to mark your exhibits, Bill.
No,
We're gonna do it at the end.
this is,
This will be one.
And the board wants me to, but can we accept him as a licensed engineer in the state of Pennsylvania?
yeah, you can do it just quickly.
Yeah, sure. So, Mike, are you licensed engineer in the state of Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And when did you obtain that license?
Last year in May of 2022.
And then in your experience, you work on land development applications, zoning applications?
Yes.
And did you prepare this zoning application?
Yes.
Ever testified before zoning hearing board before?
Yes.
Any questions from the board? If there's no objection, we'll accept Mike as an expert in site engineering.
Professional engineer.
Professional.
Yes.
Civil, I guess, civil engineer?
Yes.
Civil engineer.
Okay.
So, Mike, did your office prepare a survey of the 108 and 104?
Yes, we did.
And then in that survey, did you also prepare the zoning plan that's been attached to the application? I guess we can mark separately.
We did.
This. Okay.
Mike, could you briefly explain to the board the approach you're talking about and highlight the 1,523 square feet that it would be conveyed if the zoning relief is granted?
Yes, the property line shown with the Z is the existing property line. It is encroaching towards 104 Allgates, and that's where the pool is coming closer to the, the pool is 8 feet off of the existing property line. We are proposing to move the property line slightly to the right, farther from 104 Allgates, to increase the pool setback from 8 feet to 10 feet.
And then could you explain in the chart that is shown on applicant's exhibit A2 in the bottom left-hand corner, the existing impervious coverage calculations prior to the lot line transfer, the lot line shift, and then post what they would be?
Yes, our survey went out and calculated all the existing impervious coverage and deemed that in 104 Allgates Drive, the existing impervious coverage is 6,024 square feet, and for 108 Allgates Drive, it is 13,991 square feet. And in the proposed plan, the impervious coverage is remaining the same and is just the lot area that is changing.
And what's your understanding of the impervious coverage in the R1 district?
In the R1 district, the maximum impervious coverage is 30%.
Okay. And you're aware that we're here this evening seeking a special exception under section 182, 802B?
Yes.
And then in that section, there are some criteria. And if you could, and this, if we comply with the section 182, 802B1A, that any such extension of ordinance shall be on the lot occupied by such use, the effective date of the chapter, and the amendment of which such use first becomes non-conforming use. So we're changing any of the uses.
No, we're not changing any of the uses.
And then section 182, 802B1, small b is in boy, no such extension of the non-conforming use shall exceed 50% of the area of the lot and the floor area of the buildings devoted to such use, effective date of this chapter, or any amendment. section 182-802B1C. The extension authorizing according to section shall conform to the yard, building coverage, height requirements of the district, and a buffer screening, off-street parking, or the provision of chapter exceeding any of those other than
We are not.
in your opinion as a licensed civil engineer in the state of Pennsylvania, if it was granted, would we be jeopardizing the health or safety and welfare issues in the immediate area?
No. We believe that this wouldn't have any impact on the neighbors.
And is it your understanding that if this was granted, will any physical changes happen?
No, we're not proposing any improvements with this plan.
Jesse?
No questions.
Bill?
Nope, no questions.
Ed?
No questions.
Jessica?
No questions.
Okay, I have none. Thank you.
All I'd ask is to move the exhibits in.
For admitted?
Well, actually,
It's A1 and A2 only.
Yes, and then Mr. Latowski's here, he's just here for support, and if there's any questions of him, but obviously he's vested in this as similarly as Mr. Grant, so.
I have no questions. Do you have any question for the neighbor? No? Jesse?
Just for the record, I would imagine that the tennis court is what put that property over the impervious. Was that constructed before the township enacted an impervious coverage limit?
Mr. Latowski might not have heard that. Did you hear that question, Mr. Latowski?
You asked about the tennis court?
Yeah, let's,
So,
That's probably
wait,
it.
do I just stand up and just be sworn in? I'm sorry.
Please come forward.
And,
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes,
And your full name and address for the record, please?
I beg your pardon.
Your name and your address, please, for the record.
Alan Latowski, 108 Allgates Drive, Haverford, PA 19041.
Your first name and last
ALAN, and Latowski's like three little words, let of sky. My parents didn't tell me that, and it's unfortunate. It took me years. LETOFSKY.
I don't know if you heard the question.
I was about the tennis court going over. Yeah, if I may, when we built the court, it was our life's dream to move here and have a court. And we took that lot behind the mansion just so we could do a court. It was the right size. Although the mansion's tennis court is right next door. Jerry and Fran Weinstein owned that. They were Sneaky Pete's, if you remember Sneaky Pete. But Charlie Held, the guy who ran codes at the time, had the court slanted towards the house. And we did have a situation where we had water runoff towards the house. And we hired a civil engineer, and he had us to do what they call a French drain and red stone on our side of the court all around. And that didn't solve it, so we hired another civil engineer who took the red stone and used a transit and used that as a channel with a little E.P. Henry wall that he erected to take all the water out onto the grass so it would do no harm. So in effect, there's no runoff from the tennis court. So, impervious surfaces, the numbers are somewhat meaningful. I don't have to tell you that, but it's the way you treat the surface, and we were conscientious about it, and we have been all throughout. So there's no touching of land in this deal. I didn't know I owned the land we're going to sell. Eddie thought he bought it, he didn't, and I want to do the right thing, and so does he. And we appreciate your consideration. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for the history. Thank you.
Any other questions, Jess?
No.
Bill?
No, thank you.
Ed?
No question.
Jessica?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
With that, I'll ask if there's anyone present that received certified mail that wishes to testify, anyone present that received regular mail, any other residents of Haverford Township. With that, we'll close the record on this case, and a decision will be rendered either this evening. If we're unable to render a decision this evening, one would be rendered at our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 20th. Thank you.
Do you think you'll render tonight, or do you mind for?
Depends.
You don't need to stay out.
Okay,
It's
you'll
getting
let-
kind of late.
okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
If one's issued, you
Thank
get
you.
notice tomorrow.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Our next case is Z23-12, James and Bernadette Sharp, owners of 608 Furlong Avenue, Haverford Town, PA, DC folio number 2209-0107-500, to seek a variance from the provisions of section 182-711B1 to construct an 11-foot 4-inch by 18-foot 4-inch extension to an existing 9-foot by 18-foot 4-inch garage. A total of 20 feet 4-inch by 18 feet 4-inch that will encroach 4 feet into the required 10-foot separation between an accessory building and the rearmost portion of the main building. Property is zone R6 and located in the 2nd Ward. Please come forward. Are you both going to speak?
Yes.
I need to swear you both. Ladies first, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and address for the record, please.
Bernadette Sharp. You need it spelled BERNADETTESHARP.
And your address, just for the record.
608 Furlong Avenue, Haverford Town, PA 9083.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your full name and address for the record.
James Sharp, 608 Furlong, Haverford Town, PA 19083.
Ernie, you want to walk through exhibits?
Yeah.
Off the record, Jeff?
We're good.
Okay. So, off the record, so you can mark your exhibits, and it's my understanding you have 5 exhibits. Do you want to run us through what each is? So A1 is,
I'll do it for you to make it easier. So A1 is going to be a copy of the deed to the property.
okay,
A2 is a somewhat aerial photo of the existing garage and backyard. A3 is an assemblage of 3 pages. It is evidencing an elevation drawing, a floor plan, and a cross-section diagram. Page 1, A3 is 1, pages 1 through 3. A4 is a proposed site plan of the new garage.
Does A4 have the impervious calculations attached to it, or is it separate?
I made that A5.
Oh, okay,
Separately as A5.
got it.
So A5 is the impervious surface calculation sheet. And then lastly, A6 is a copy of a letter from neighbor Carolyn Ferguson. Address is 606 Furlong Avenue, Haverford Town, PA 19038.
okay, so those exhibits are admitted to the record. Now that we've gotten that out, please tell us a little bit about what you would like to do. And
Okay. I'm going to start, and basically, I've been a Haverford Town resident for 37 years. I purchased the house that we're talking about in 1986. As a young single person before I met my wonderful husband, and a copy of the deed is attached. It's A1. I'm learning. At the time, I expected to remain single. So the Cape Cod house, I don't know if you've been to Furlong Avenue. It's over near the Minoa Elementary School. It's a street with a lot of cookie cutter, small houses. They're relatively small, 2 bedrooms. It was for my needs. It was a good township. I was excited about being in Haverford Township. And I knew the school district was good, and as a single person, I didn't need the school district, but I knew that it affected your real estate values. So I was excited about that. Little did I know, 3 years later, I bought the house. 3 years later, I met my wonderful husband and the man of my dreams, and we started a family within 5 years. So we ended up having 2 children. We raised them in Haverford Township in that real small house, and they attended Haverford schools all the years. And we love our Minoa neighborhood and our friends on Furlong Avenue. Sorry. Too emotional.
So we've been married like 34 years.
He puts up with this.
I grew up in Haverford Town. I've lived in Haverford Town 60 plus years. Left for a little while but came back. As my wife mentioned, I moved into the house in 1989. Though I liked the house and the property, I never felt the garage was big enough for, even if you've seen those garages, you can't even put your car in there. We do store a snow blower outside. We store our lawnmowers outside. So it just makes room, the garage would make more room for the storage. I always had a wish to make the garage bigger, but because we had 2 kids, we had to go to put them in through college. It just didn't, it became second on the list of things that needed to be done. Both children got married in 2019, which also postponed this plan. So let me give you a current status of the garage, Exhibit A2. Is that right?
The picture?
Okay. If you look at the picture, I don't know if they can bring that up on the screen or not, or you don't.
They have it in front of them.
Okay. Let me see that picture. If you take a look at the picture, the garage, it's 93 plus years old. I recently discovered that the back of the garage and the side of the garage on the yard, the bottom sill plate and the footer are gone. They rotted away through I don't know how many years of water or whatever. So I now have about 6 inches of the bottom of the garage and the side of the garage that doesn't exist. So I had to put in additional 2x4s to hold up the roof rafters and hold up the garage. At that point we said, well, we've got to do something with this. And since I've always wanted to expand the garage, now is the time to do it. So the garage, needs some work one way or the other. It needs to get something done to it. And since this is something we've always looked at, so I was hoping to retire. I'm hoping to retire in another year or two. And so looking at retirement, I earned a degree in cabinet making, associate's degree in cabinet making 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I've made projects, tables, baby cradles, things like that. Never anything for sale, just projects for nieces, nephews, those kinds of things, stuff for our own house. I made a china closet. But I did all that stuff at work. I was able to do that at work and do it after hours, do it on the weekends, those kinds of things. So now that I'm getting ready to retire, I'm not going to be able to do those kinds of things at work. I'd like to do some of that stuff in my garage. Not turn it into a business. It's going to be a hobby. It always has been a hobby. Oops, sorry about that. So unfortunately, the only possible space to do that at our home is in the garage. The basement only has 6'7", 6'8" ceilings. And it's currently our family room because the rooms upstairs, the living room upstairs is 11 by 13. You can barely put a couch in there, let alone anything else. So there's really no other space in the house to be able to do those kinds of things. So all this has led us to the decision to enlarge the garage. As we mentioned in the appeal, we were very limited based on the land plot and shared driveway with the neighbor. We can only go one way.
So, do you go by Jim?
Yeah, Jim's fine.
Jim. In the photo, there's a yellow string sort of laid
Yes.
across the yard. Is that where the garage?
That is correct. And that's why we put it there, so you can kind of get a feel for how big that's going to be. So yes.
And you would tear down the existing?
Yes.
And so what exactly are you going to do to the garage, other than widen?
So the exhibit with the drawings, from
A3,
A3,
the elevation. Page 1 is the elevations.
you'll look at that, and do you have one? Okay, we're looking at this drawing, right? So the front of it would look, you would see the garage door and a main door. The garage door is 9 foot wide so you can get a car in there, so you can actually get the car in the garage right now, but you can't get out of the car. So we'd like to make the garage door a little bit wider.
I used to live on Wilson, and we had an exact, a garage about that width, could never park a car in it.
Right.
Also rotted out around the perimeter of the base. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that front elevation would look like that. The left elevation is what you're seeing, the neighbor's garage roof there with the siding above that. The siding would match the siding that's on our current house.
So, thank you. I just wanted to ask that question. So, on A2, we have your existing garage.
Correct.
And that is a shared garage?
That is correct.
Okay, and so on A3, where we have the front elevation of the garage here, would there be essentially an equivalent half on the other side?
Our garage will stay there, but that elevation or that drawing you're seeing there, that roof is 15 foot off the ground. And their current garage is 10 foot, or both garages are 10 foot off the ground.
Got it. So there would be a step down here.
Correct.
And then the old garage roof line would
That is
stay.
correct.
You're not tearing down
No.
the other side of the garage?
No.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And the letter you got is from that neighbor. She's okay with that. She understands what we're trying to do. And then the rear elevation has no windows or anything like that. And then the right elevation would have 2 windows. They're side-by-side windows.
And just for the record, what is beyond the fence in this photo?
That's the Manoa Elementary, the new Manoa Elementary School. It used to be on the other corner of our street.
It's a field. It's been there forever.
The bottom, very far end of the field.
But there's no homes or anything like that?
No.
No harms,
No.
no. In fact,
No homes.
Yeah. The only thing that's right now is, is it called a backstop?
Baseball backstop, basically.
Yeah.
Kids come back there and play
It used to be on
baseball.
the other side, so we collect balls in our yard. But
That's right here at the very top of the.
Yeah, that's the fence,
Of A2. Okay, that's the backstop.
probably, yeah.
And what's on, so you have your neighbor share a driveway. What's on the other side? Is there a break and more houses or?
You're looking at the picture?
Yeah, so.
Yes, on the other side, there's a house, another neighbor, and that neighbor, we talked to her, she has no problem with us building the garage, or enlarging the garage. That neighbor shares our front yard, okay? That neighbor has a son-in-law who lives next to them, okay? We mow each other's lawns, I mow my lawn probably once a month.
But
It's a
they're
brother-in-law.
twins.
Yeah,
So-
no, they're singles, they're all singles.
So we all have singles, but driveways every other house. So what happens is, if you take my house or our house and you flip it to the other side with a sharing fence there, she has a lawn, she has her garage, her brother-in-law's garage, it's her sister's house, and they have a shared driveway.
I mean, the reason I was asking is, God forbid, if there were a fire, right? That's where the 10-foot separation concept comes in.
Yes.
So firefighters could get back there safely and fight a fire if there was one. They could come around the other side of your house, right?
Correct.
To
There's
get
a-
to home, to get to your backyard.
Yes, there's a fence there, but there's also a fence that goes onto the field, so they could also get from the fence, from the field side as well.
Yeah. What I've seen in the past is, if there's anything that has to be done, trucks won't go down our driveways because they're too narrow. For any things like tree removals, they've actually used the school district's lot and brought the heavy armed trucks in and reached over and did all the work back that way. That's with tree removals I've seen, but.
So, as far as the coverage calculations, you can look at those and see that we're all well within impervious calculations for our zoning. I think we're at the maximum is at 40% for building coverage, and we're at 34%. And the impervious coverage is 65%, and we're at 56%, so we're well within those tolerances.
Are you doing any new paving as part of this project?
I'm sorry, what?
Any new paving? Are you extending the driveway?
No, the driveway's going to stay the same. to put the footers and that kind of stuff is they're gonna have to tear up some of the current driveway, but they'll put that back in.
So the only additional is the new extended garage.
Space under the new one,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Is there anything else you guys would like to add before we ask questions?
Explain
Already. Okay. The exhibits are admitted.
Yeah, in the picture, you can see, looking down on the picture, you can see a part of our deck. That deck is what's caused the problem. The deck was put in 2014. And in 2014, you could measure diagonally from the corner of the deck to the garage and say that was 10 feet. But then they found out that was the incorrect way of doing it, I believe. So now you have to do a straight line across from the garage as if the garage was it was extended, and do 10 feet there. So that's where our approximate 4 feet problem came into play. We missed it by, I guess. If we had known that, we could have done a deck different.
Would have built a smaller
But you
deck.
don't know what's going to happen in the future, so we got stuck. But basically, that's what causes this problem.
Ed?
No questions.
Jessica?
My only question is there any scenario where you would cut your deck back to get that additional 4 feet?
I believe the foundation of the deck is out there, so you'd have to really rebuild it.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I believe. Is that true?
I know there's footers
imagine on the
underneath, I know that
corners.
for sure.
I would think they're at the corners.
So in the garage, I'm sure you'll need power and things like that. Will the garage be heated?
I'm exploring that at this point. I'm not sure exactly how, I'm not gonna use a wood stove, I can tell you that. But I would think at some point I will have to put some sort of, whether I put out like a mini split. We actually have mini splits in our house because you can't really air condition those houses anymore. But at some point I may do something like that.
Okay, and then what type of plumbing would you?
Not having any plumbing at all.
plumbing.
No plumbing at all.
All right, so no bathroom, no sinks.
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Jesse?
You're required to have 2 off-street parking spaces. So now I think your testimony was you'll actually be improving the garage to be able to actually fit a car, right? And so a car would be able to fit in there. And then it looks like you have at least a 9-foot by maybe even 24-foot area of paving that can you also fit a car in there?
I'm not sure.
In the picture, there's already a car there. That's it.
So have you had any issues with parking 2 cars now?
No, we have the 2 cars side by side, like not 2 cars of ours. One parks on the street, across the street. We're only allowed to park on one side of our street. So we park across the street from our house, and that neighbor has just 1 car in her family because she just is raising 2 boys. And she parks in the back. She has no garage. So she can park in the spot that would have been a garage at her spot. And, we all get along, so it's never been an issue.
There's also
She's very
parking
good.
at the top of the street where the old Manila Elementary School is. They turned that into a parking lot. And I do see some neighbors park their cars up there, mostly when there's soccer games or those kinds of things.
But I was just trying to clarify for the record that it appears that you can fit 2 cars off-street as required, and I believe that you would then meet that requirement. Do you agree?
Oh, you're counting the new garage?
Yes.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
We can't get 2 cars there now.
No, I'm sorry. So you're improving your current situation by being able to
ability
park
to
in the
have-
garage.
We can
Okay,
park in the
and somebody could lay by and park in that paved area that you have now? Okay, no other questions.
Is there anything else you guys would like to add?
I'm sorry, you said paved area, or you mean the blacktop?
Yes.
Okay. Because there is concrete next to that.
Well,
Nobody parks
yeah,
there.
actually, and the concrete too. So somebody could park there conceivably.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys would like to add?
Unless you're, if you're leaning towards saying, no, we don't want to do, you're not going to be able to do this, is there any other options we could do that would still allow this project to go through?
I don't don't want you to draw any inferences from the
Okay.
question that
Okay.
has
Sorry,
been
what?
asked. I don't want you to draw any inferences from the questions that
Oh,
have been
okay.
asked. The finish of the garage is going to be consistent with the house.
Correct. Correct. We're actually putting 3 layers of, you'll see it on the drawing, 3 layers of brick around the back and down the side to allow, some cinder blocks. Not bricks, cinder blocks, to allow for any of the water issues that we've run into in the past, so that we don't have that problem, or the future homeowner 40 years from now doesn't have that issue either.
Any other questions before we wrap it up?
One other thing, I'm looking at the garage profile, and it shows your wall that attaches to the other garage. Then it shows an overhang. Will that overhang be on your neighbor's property?
I'm sorry, which picture are you
I think
looking
he's
at?
looking at this one,
I can't tell which one.
You're looking at the-
exhibit it would be.
the back.
No, I think it's the inside one.
A3, page 3.
Okay, does it say floor plan in the bottom right corner?
Cross section.
It's a
Oh,
cross
cross
section,
section.
yep. Just a minute. No. Yeah, we're just looking for it now, it's in here somewhere.
Here it is. Okay,
So yes, that will hang over that wall, yes.
It goes over your property line though?
no, the longer side,
He's talking about this little section right here.
this piece, so at the tall end, you're talking about that little overhang, that'll overhang to get us to where the current wall is in the garage. To cover her for when she, like, her roof line has to meet into ours, and ours is built inside inside the common wall. So we have to cover that small piece at the top, so that overhang will do that.
So that'll match her roof on the top.
Now, her roof comes 5 feet down from there, and Mel.
I don't know how you do that. Nope.
Is that it, Ed?
Yep, that's it.
I have one more.
Anything else?
Do you know how far your stair is from the garage? What
sorry,
that,
how
what the
far?
distance will be between the garage and the stair?
And the stair, yes, you measured that. 3 foot.
3'8".
Is there any, would you be opposed to moving that stair
No.
to provide more space for a car to drive?
The other option is to take the door and move it in, instead of having.
Oh, she's not worried about the door, she wants the space, right?
I'm worried about the space between the garage and the deck, because ultimately the 10 feet is so that, you know, a vehicle can come down in the event of a fire.
I would say no. If we need to move the stairs, we'll move the stairs.
Okay,
Is that it?
that's it.
Ed, Jess, Bill? Yep. Okay. Anything else you guys would like to add?
I don't think so.
I
Okay.
think so.
And there's no one in the audience at this point, so you might
No, we
think
gave
me
you the
crazy, but I have to go through this. Is there anyone present that received certified mail that wishes to testify? Anyone present that received regular mail? Any other residents of Haverford Township? With that, we'll close the record on this case, and the decision will be rendered either this evening. If we're not able to render a decision this evening, one would be rendered at our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 20th. We'll go into recess, and then we'll come out. We have administrative matters. We'll see if we can do decisions. We're off the record.
And we're good.
All right, we'll resume the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, June 15, 2023. Administrative matters. Jessica, minutes?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our June 1st meeting, which Ernie distributed earlier today.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
Okay. Ernie? One wants to make the motion?
Yeah, you have to.
Okay. You're not really supposed to be making motions from the chair. Does anybody want to make
Yeah,
that
I'll
motion?
make a motion for agenda item 1 on today's agenda to approve a clarification of our decision to, which would serve to resolve the appeal by the applicant of JPM Haverford Road versus Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board. there was a clarification presented and shared with the board, this is for the property located at 2228 Haverford Road in zoning hearing board case Z22-28. I would make a motion to approve this clarification.
I'll second that.
Okay, so there's a motion, a second, now there's discussion. I just want to mention that the board met in executive session to discuss this legal matter with our solicitor. Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that matter's resolved. With respect to case Z23-10, George and Annie Canarcut. Narkin. Owners of 2346 Poplar Road. I'm not going to read the rest of the description into the record. Jessica, would you please take that decision?
Yes, I would make a motion to approve the application with the following conditions. That a 4-foot black estate fence to match the style of Cardinal Foley will be built with no less than 50% of the fence open, and that work will be complete within 1 year and in accordance with the notes of testimony.
Ed?
I concur.
Bill?
I agree.
Jesse?
I agree.
So do I, and I should have asked if everyone was prepared to vote on this matter by voting. Presumably you do. So the case is approved 5-0. The next decision will be case Z23-11, Edmund and Michelle Grant, owners of 104 Allgates Drive. Jessica, are you prepared to vote?
I am.
Ed?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
And so am I. Bill, would you please take that decision?
Yep. With respect to case Z23-11, I would vote to approve the requested variance, subject to two conditions. One, the lot line adjustment shall remain subject to recommendation by the Planning Commission and approval by the Board of Commissioners. And second, that the final plan reflective of the new lot line adjustment shall be recorded in the county land records of Delaware County.
Okay. Jessica?
I agree.
Ed?
I concur.
Jesse?
I agree.
And so do I. That application is approved with those conditions, 5-0. KZ 23-12, James and Bernadette Sharp, owners of 608 Furlong Avenue. Are you prepared to vote, Jessica?
I am.
Ed?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Jesse, would you please take that decision?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. With regards to case Z23-12, I would vote to approve the requested relief with the following reasonable conditions. One, that water runoff shall be controlled so as not to adversely affect neighbors. Two, the project shall be completed within 1 year. And three, it shall be completed in accordance with the notes of testimony.
Bill?
I agree.
Jessica?
I disagree.
Ed?
I agree.
And so do I. That application is approved 4-1. Any other administrative matters or anything we need to discuss? We are adjourned.